And we are live. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to She Built It Boss Lady Chronicles. I am Sharita Gaskins Tillett. I am your host. And this is the show where we feature the amazing stories of ordinary women who have owned their power to transform their lives. And so I'm super excited to introduce you to tonight's guest. But before I do, I just want to give a few minutes for people to jump on. And while we wait, I want to remind you if you're watching us live, please say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching us from. Definitely feel free to put your questions in the comments. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay, still tell us where you're watching us from and still put your questions in the comments because I will definitely pass them on to our guest. Also, I just want to remind you that registration is still open for a weekend for me, the premier wellness experience for professional women, taking place in Jamaica, June 20th to the 24th. It is going to be absolutely amazing. This is one you definitely do not want to miss. We are going to have a transformative time in paradise. So www.aweekendforme.com to register. If you want more information, go to the website. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom call with you. There's a link on the website to book a call. So I'm happy to discuss it further with you if you need additional information that you can't get on the website. So let me introduce tonight's guest. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, who is a seasoned physician, best-selling author, vibrant voice behind the Essential Self-Care podcast, and the founder of Radiant Living Institute, where she specializes in guiding high-achieving women through major life transitions. With over 2 decades of expertise, Dr. Ajmani brings a unique blend of Eastern wisdom and Western precision to her impactful speaking engagements, coaching programs, and podcast. A dynamic speaker, coach, author, and thought leader, Dr. Ajmani empowers women to rediscover their inner radiance and confidently navigate life's challenges. Drawing from her experiences as a physician and entrepreneur, she intimately understands the importance of prioritizing self care in maintaining health, relationships, and overall life satisfaction. Dr. Ajmani skillfully weaves together scientific evidence and practical tools, leaving women feeling inspired and equipped to build their vision of a radiant life. Well, that sounds absolutely amazing. Welcome, Dr. Chital. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you on your show and to share a bit about my journey with you and with your listeners.
Thank you for coming. We're really happy to have you and excited to hear about this radiant life that you're going to introduce us to. But before we get to that, I'd like to start by having you kind of take us on your journey because you weren't always a coach, right? So I think you practiced medicine for a while. Tell us about that, how you started off and then also the transition from medicine to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting journey. I often say it's been kind of a long and windy journey as life is,
Yes.
right? And that's exactly what I guide my clients through as well is just, life is rarely that sort of straight path that we
I'm gonna say I'm
plan
gonna
for.
venture to say never.
It's
I'm gonna
never.
do you one better, right?
Exactly. It's never that straight path that we plan for. And so that's exactly the journey that I went on. But I'll start back at when I first started medical school. So I first started medical school. I was 21 years old. My first semester of medical school, I started practicing yoga at the local YMCA. And so this was quite a few years ago. This was over 2 decades ago.
Okay.
And yoga wasn't quite as popular as it is now. And so I was like, what is this? And I'll just try it out. I knew it came from my culture, my
Mhm.
country of origin, it's the origins of yoga. And I was like, let me try it out. And in those first classes, my first semester of medical school, I discovered this piece within myself that I had never experienced before, that I just never knew existed in that way. And so I knew that I wanted to dive deeper in that. And I had also heard about this thing called Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is the ancient medical system of India. It is essentially a framework and a system of lifestyle practices and habits and daily routines and diet and activities that are really tailored to each individual. And so I had heard about this. I had started practicing yoga, had this experience myself of deep piece, and then also had heard about Ayurveda, and I was like, there's something to this, and I want to dive deeper. And so I knew, like, the seed was planted that first year of medical school that I wanted to dive deeper into those practices. But I wanted to finish my medical training first.
Yeah.
So the seed was planted, though, that after I finished med school and residency, I was going to do a yoga certification program. I was going to do an Ayurveda certification program. I knew it.
So
And
what led
so
you to the yoga in the first place, you think?
it was a couple things. One, it was a curiosity. That was the biggest thing. It was a curiosity
Mhm.
because it was starting to gain, it wasn't definitely not as popular as it is now, but it was starting to gain some momentum here in the US at that time. This was 2002. So it was
Mhm.
starting to gain some momentum at this time, but still not quite mainstream. And I knew that the origins of it were from my culture. And just, I wanted to see kind of what that was about,
Okay.
especially since it came from my culture.
Yes.
I was also a runner. And I thought that it would probably help like balance my body, just the
Mhm.
stretching. I
Okay.
thought it would help balance, the impact that running has on my body as well. So that was another reason. So those were the two things. It was really just a curiosity. I went to my first class with, two of my best friends, and they enjoyed it too, but not to the same extent as me.
Right.
And I found that I started to like, my favorite class was like a Friday 5 p.m. So I found that I was skipping happy hours to go, all my med school
Right.
classmates
Right.
were going to happy hour, and I was going to this yoga class on Friday evenings because I was just hooked, because it was something that I had never experienced before. Um, so I continued to lean into it on my own journey in medical school, in residency. I would say I experienced my first bout of burnout my intern year of residency. So, for those who may be listening who aren't in medicine, that's the first year of really like on the job training, the first year after
Right.
you graduate medical school. And it, that again, like burnout wasn't talked about at that time as much as it is now. So I felt
No.
very isolated in my experience of
Mhm.
that. I
It
leaned
was
into
just
tools.
normal, right? I mean, honestly, that
Yeah.
it was
I
just
mean,
residency.
yeah, yeah. And that's what, it was considered normal, but I had a really hard time with it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 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 exactly, because everyone else considered it very normal,
Yeah.
right? That's just the culture of the field,
Right.
um, of medicine. It was hard to really talk to anyone about what I was going through, and I continued to lean into different tools and practices myself, and I would say that was the first place, though, where this other seed was planted, an insight of, I know when we before we started recording, I know you were interested in kind of different mindset shifts that happened along the way. So I want to emphasize this because this was a big one. It was my intern year, and I remember talking to a second year resident, and I was like, I'm doing all the things. I'm going for like on my days off or on my time off, I'm going for runs. I'm spending time in nature. I'm going to yoga classes, right? So I'm sleeping as much as I can, to catch up on sleep. It's like I'm doing all these things to take care of myself, but I'm still having a really hard time here. And I remember her saying, well, no amount of yoga is going to take the place of the fact that you're working 80-hour work weeks.
Right. Right.
Right.
And that's the truth.
And that is the truth. Right. And that was such a big realization to me. And, I talk a lot about self care in my work now that I do with Radiant Living Institute and my podcast. And it's all within context, the context of your life, right? And so
Right.
for me, my big realization in that was that my lifestyle, my daily schedule is very, very important to me to find some
Mhm.
semblance of balance in my life. And so that was planted within me through that experience intern year. And so then when I obviously residency, there's not much you can do, like your schedule's what your schedule is. So I did, leaned into different tools to cope during that time frame. But then once I had the
I wanna interrupt you.
autonomy.
Can I interrupt
Yeah,
you for a second? Because I'm
yeah.
really impressed. I am super impressed that you instituted self-care in the middle of residency. Because,
Mm,
I mean, even to have the realization that you needed to take care of yourself and to the
mhm,
level of saying, "Okay, I'm exercising, I'm getting out in nature, I'm getting enough sleep." I mean, you were a unicorn from the start.
mm.
Because, I mean, when I think back to residency, and you and I did residency in the same era, we weren't,
Mhm.
we were just trying to survive. There was
Yeah.
no thought of thriving. There was no thought of, at least not the residents I knew, we weren't talking about taking care of ourselves. I mean,
Mhm.
if we ate that day and we drank some water, it was a win. Like
Yeah.
that, the bar
Yeah.
was low,
Yeah. Yeah.
very,
That's
very
true.
low. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to stop and applaud you for that before I forgot.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, but I really realized that like, okay, my schedule, that lifestyle is really important to me. And so when I went out to look for my first, job and any job since then, that has been something that I have prioritized. Is this going to afford me time to do all those things, to
Yeah,
exercise, to make sure I'm getting sleep? Obviously every job and has, its challenges and obviously different responsibilities and duties and hours and schedule and on call and all of those sort of things. But to the best of my ability to have it sort of fit the rhythms that I was starting to learn about myself that I thrive in. And
hmm,
so that was a big moment, that was a big sort of realization for
sure.
me that I've carried forward throughout the rest of my life up until this point so far. Um, but that being said, when I finished residency, I went ahead and did do a yoga teacher training and I started taking Ayurveda workshops and started learning more about those and started to integrate as I was learning things, started to just continue to integrate more into my life. Um, and I found it to be so helpful with continuing to, with different jobs that I took, with continuing to navigate jobs within pediatrics, navigating burnout because I didn't just hit burnout that one time intern year. It had been kind of like this sort of up and down, up and
Yeah.
down. And so, but each time I learned more about myself. Each time I dived deep, I used it as an opportunity to dive deeper into learning more about
So what
myself.
kinds of things, when you say burnout, what kinds of feelings were you having? Because sometimes we use burnout a lot,
Yeah.
as kind of like a catch-all phrase, but I think it feels a little different for each person. And so I'm just wondering, what was your experience like?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it does feel a little bit different. It can show up different for different people. Um, Depression, certainly.
Hmm, hmm,
Definitely, clinical level depression, right? Um, that was a big, those were big ones. The sort of most recent instance of it um led to, also this sort of detachment from the
hmm,
work that I was
hmm.
doing, and the care that I was delivering, and which is an essential part of
Right.
the definition of burnout as well. A piece of it that has been reported in published reports and definitions of burnout. Um, as well as another piece that was, I had I read a article about burnout, like a published scientific article
Hmm,
about burnout, and it had these sort of three characteristics of it. One was a detachment from your work. I definitely experienced that. One was being very critical of your own work, like
hmm.
not feeling like you're doing as good of a job as you used to, even though
Okay.
you maybe are, but it's your
Sure.
own self perception of that
Yeah.
starts to come up. And then those feelings of depression, right? And so I definitely, during the toughest times of burnout that I've experienced, I definitely experienced all of those pieces of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and I
Yeah.
know I interrupted you, so let's see, where were we? You were telling your
Yeah,
story.
were we?
You were
Oh, yeah,
saying
yeah.
that you experienced burnout several times over the course of your career,
Yeah,
and
and
that
I
you learned
found all of
something
those,
new.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Learn something new. So that's definitely been a big sort of mindset piece for me as well is, I guess, these days a lot of us, we will call it that growth mindset, but the way that I talk about it is, and one of the sort of core principles that I bring into Radiant Living Institute and working with my clients is that life's challenges can be the greatest catalyst of self-empowerment if we
Mm.
let it be,
Say that
right?
again. Say that. I like that.
Life's
Say it again.
Yeah, life's challenges can be the greatest catalyst for self-empowerment if we
Okay.
allow them to be. That's the
Okay.
key though, right? If we allow them to be. If we open ourselves up to what can I learn from this?
Right.
What can I learn about myself? What can I learn about this situation, right? Is this situation signaling me to pivot in some way?
Right.
Is it signaling me to care for myself deeper in a certain way or in a new way? Maybe not deeper, but in a different way.
Right.
right? Is this challenge coming to me to tell me that this relationship is no longer serving me,
Hmm.
whether that's a friendship, an intimate relationship, whatever it may be, a
Right.
professional relationship, right? And so I definitely went through in my journey as well, in addition to all of these professional challenges, a lot of personal challenges too, just navigating different relationships, um, different patterns, unhealthy patterns in relationships that I had to navigate and find my way through. And honestly, all of that. So the professional and personal challenges really for me helped me learn to tune into my inner voice more and
Hmm.
honor my inner voice more. It's a journey I'm still on, it's a practice I'm still on, but all of that definitely contributed to the work that I'm now doing with Radiant Living Institute as well.
I think
Because
it's oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, because as I was, integrating and learning all of these tools and modalities, um, and learning how to stand in my own power, in my own voice, right? Which starts from hearing my inner voice and
Yeah.
honoring her, right? That's where that inner power comes from, right?
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
another thing I always say is that a radiant life starts from within. So a radiant life will look different for everyone. Like my definition of a radiant life may look different than yours, right? Yours,
Yeah,
it'll look different
absolutely.
for everyone. But the thing is, it starts from within, what feels true to you. And that's why it looks different for everyone, because we need to honor that our truths look different. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just really like it's very impressed. Again, with the introspection and the hearing your own voice and actually recognizing that you needed time to hear your voice. Because, I know for me, when I experienced what I would consider to be, my season of burnout, I wasn't hearing my voice.
Mhm.
Things were just happening at too quick a pace, too rapid a pace for me to even hear my voice, to check in, to ask myself, what did I need? What did I want?
Mhm.
Was, this relationship or this job or this whatever still serving me in the way that I needed it to? So I think, it sounds to me that were more evolved through the process than many of us. And so where did those skills come from? Do you feel like, so one question I often ask that I haven't asked in a few weeks though, is do you feel like you were born a boss lady? Because to me, when I think of a boss, I think of a woman who owns her power. And it sounds like you understood from, somewhere else, from a different time, that you had the agency at least to look at your life, determine the things that you wanted and you needed. Where did that come from? You feel like you were just born with it? Is that something that you learned culturally growing up? I'm curious.
I feel like it's both. I feel like it's a combination of the nature and nurture. So I
Okay.
think definitely from a young age, I definitely, and my mom will share this, like I definitely kind of knew what I wanted and would go after it and was very bold with that and, things like that. And so I think some of it was my nature. Even when I was young, people often described me as an old soul.
Mm. Okay.
So I think there were some of these pieces that I think uh, were innate, and a lot of them that were the nurture, that
Mhm.
were life situations that, like I just said, like life's challenges being catalysts for self empowerment. I mean, that was certainly I would definitely say my most challenging life moments. I would not want to go through any of them again. At
Mhm.
the same time, they were the greatest teachers for me.
Okay. All
They were
right.
the greatest teachers. I learned so much, and I would say that my family, my support system, so family, um, different therapists I've spoken to over the years, different coaches I've worked with over the years, my friends, all of that really leaning into my village, my community, my support system while I was navigating those things was really pivotal too. And one of the reasons, Sharita, that I focus on working with, I don't work exclusively with women, but I do focus on working with high achieving women. And one of the reasons is it can be so hard for us to ask for help,
Yes.
and to reach out to our tribe and reach out to our community. And I want to come here and say, as a physician, as a woman who I consider myself, very strong, very independent woman, that there is no way I would have been able to get through the things I've gotten through in my life and be here today as I am if it were not for my tribe. And if
Right.
it were not for me for asking help and seeking out support through, again, both sort of personal, informal means, right?
Hmm.
Family, friends, as well as professional therapists, coaches, right? Group programs, right? Like group coaching programs, things
Hmm.
like that, peer support groups. Um, right. And so just to show, even from my own journey, from my own experience, that it is completely okay. We like none of us, I truly believe that, and this is why I do the work I do, that none of us are meant to go through any of this alone.
No, absolutely
We are
not.
social
No,
creatures. We're not meant to
I
go through this
agree.
alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would even go so far as to say even the gifts that we have, like, you have this gift for helping people to get in touch with themselves and to identify their radiance. I think even that those gifts, you're not supposed to keep that gift to yourself. You're
Mm-mm.
supposed to share it with the world. We were all put here to be in relationship with each other. We were never meant to do life alone, but somehow things have gotten all mixed up and we put on our superwoman capes and somehow it's like an indictment of us if we can't do
Mhm.
it all. And the
Yeah.
reality is nobody can do it all, nor should anyone have to do it all or even try. So
Exactly.
yes, I love that you're encouraging us to, lean on our support systems because
Yeah.
definitely we were not meant to do life alone.
Exactly. And like you just said, we all have these gifts, right? And I do believe that we've all been given specific and this comes from Ayurveda as well, is that we've all been given and we're born with specific gifts, you could call them, strengths, quote unquote weaknesses or quote unquote
Mhm.
imperfections, but they were all given to us for a reason to fulfill our unique purpose, right?
Yes.
And when we deny our inner voice, we deny ourselves from filling that unique purpose that we're here
Right.
for. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
why, and I feel like that's why I can definitely say for myself, the greatest amount of sort of discord or discomfort in within myself or in my life has been when I have not been honoring my inner voice. Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that holds true because your inner voice is guiding you towards to fulfill your purpose, to share your gifts with the world, to share your
Right.
gifts with your community.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I look at it almost like on a soul level. Your
Hmm.
soul knows what you need. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so important that you take the time to check in and to listen to it. I can
Yeah.
think of another time when I was experiencing burnout, but it was really my own fault. It was a result of a professional decision that I knew. You know how, like it's like you said, you kind of know. Like I knew when I made the decision that it was not a good choice for me, but I did it for the wrong reasons or what I thought were the right reasons at the time. And then I had so much inner turmoil as a result of that. And it almost felt like I had betrayed myself. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but you're right. You have to listen because your soul knows what it needs and
Yeah.
knows, what you were meant to do. And it will lead you where you're supposed to go.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest. I mean, I've definitely had many moments in my life where, just like you said, I think that's of like feeling like you betrayed yourself. Like I have definitely had lots of moments in my life where I felt that way. And I feel like that's the hardest. Like that's so hard. And so like I want to honor her, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and a couple, something that you mentioned a couple times was giving yourself that time to hear your inner voice, to connect with your inner voice. And I know that's really central to the work that both of you and I are both
Yes.
doing is like giving yourself that time. And I like to think of it as space too.
Yes.
Really giving yourself that space. And I know that's what you do with the retreats. And you have that one coming up soon. That's what I really, just through clients working with me, them committing that time,
Right.
space, and energy, for that time span to really give themselves some space to start to look at this. And what I do also is I guide clients to be able to create some of that space in their daily routine on a regular
Mhm.
basis so that they, one of the things I'm most proud of is that many of my clients don't, after a period of time of working with me, don't need to continue working with me
Exactly.
because they've learned ways to create that space and listen to and honor their inner voice through different tools and practices that they've gained through our work together. But so that way you can continue to tap into that on a regular basis where it doesn't take a whole long time. I think that's what uh, kind of holds a lot of people back
Yeah.
is they think they need to do something for like meditate for an hour a day, which by the way is so hard. I've been meditating for years. I don't even meditate for an hour a day in terms of like a seated meditation. It's not necessary. You know, Starting out with a couple minutes is fine if that's the way that you choose to connect with yourself. That does not even have to be the way that you choose to connect with yourself. And I guide people on a very individual process of to find what's going to work best for them. I don't believe it's one size fits all at
No,
all.
not
Um,
at all.
yeah, but taking some space, creating some space to connect with yourself on some level daily. That's a habit I really work with my clients to really get that part of their daily routine because I think it's so important.
That's beautiful. So now, yeah, I know that you kind of blend Eastern and Western practices. Can you tell us a little more about that and what some of the differences in outcome or maybe some of the advantages? Because, and I will, I will disclose my personal bias, which is that, Eastern medicine was around long before Western medicine, number one. And number two, it's working. It's working. And so I think the blend is beautiful. And I think there's a lot for us to learn by combining. I don't think it's, either or. I think it's both and. But anyway, I,
Absolutely.
I, I said my piece, but I want to hear what your experience is.
I agree with you completely. That first semester of medical school that I was telling you about, and when I started practicing yoga, I remember I wrote it on a scrap sheet of paper. My mom, she's tells me, she's like, "Sheetal, you should have saved that sheet of paper." I didn't save it, but I distinctly remember
Yeah.
writing on a little scrap piece of paper, East meets West. I always
Ah,
knew that there was a place for this, and for a blending, not one or the other, but
right.
for some sort of blending, there's a place for both. But in my work, some of the things that I've seen. So first of all, gosh, there's so much I could share about this, but I would say that my first Ayurveda teacher, he was also an allopathic physician. So he was also an MD and he was an Ayurvedic practitioner. And one thing he had said is similar to what you said. So these Eastern practices have been around for thousands and thousands of years. So those are practice based evidence. The
Right.
mere practice of them for thousands and thousands of years are the evidence that it
That
works,
they work,
right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Maybe
in
randomized controlled
Western
study, but
right. And in Western medicine, we're seeking that evidence-based practice, right? Which definitely holds value as well, right? Like the science showing that, demonstrating that this works, right? Now, that being said, um, there's a place for both of them. And what I really love is that now there has been so much interest growing in these areas that there is also modern scientific methods,
yeah.
research studies proving how these thousands years old practices work and
Yes.
benefit us in different ways. So I think that's really cool because not only do they have the practice-based evidence, now they have the modern science. We have the tools, we have the capability to actually look at it in a very scientific way and prove with modern evidence-based methodologies that it works, which I think is really great. Now, where I have seen the difference. So, in my work through Radiant Living Institute, when I'm working with clients, now really I'm working in a coaching model and a coaching methodology, and so really helping people navigate major life stressors, major life transitions. So, really, I will say my focus is not on physical symptoms, right? I'm not diagnosing or treating medical conditions,
Mhm.
right? Um, but what I will say is that I have had many clients come to me who are, navigating some sort of major life stressor. And we work together on these emotional, mental, lifestyle, habits, diet, activities on all of these levels, this really global, holistic level, right? And many of them have come back to me and said, this physical symptom that I had before
Yeah.
working with you is now better. I'm not
Yeah,
having
because
any
it's all
symptoms,
connected,
or it's
right?
complete, or it's improving. Yeah, because it's all connected. And this is where, as a, you know, uh, I practiced um, pediatrics. I practiced the allopathic medical system for well over 16 years before transitioning to working on my business, Radiant Living Institute, full time. But it's where we don't have the time, the knowledge, right? Because we aren't
Right.
trained in these holistic modalities.
No.
And we don't have that, the way our healthcare system is set up now, we don't have the time in our clinic visits to talk about and ask all these questions that we need to cover those aspects. So that's where I've seen a really big difference is in the work that I'm doing now through this coaching model, and I didn't go through a traditional coaching program. Like, really, this is a model, a curriculum that I've created myself through my own journey, through walking clients through this journey, through really integrating the Eastern and Western approaches. This is something that I really created, and is really unique in that way. And through this, through working on this holistic level, you're finding benefits all around, which is just incredible.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more about Radiant Living Institute, just in general. We haven't talked very much about it. I know where you're located, but tell us where you're located. Tell us who you help, what kind of services you provide there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I'm based in Virginia. I do see and work with clients locally here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. So if you are local, we do have the opportunity and the option to work in person together. For individual or group coaching. Currently, I have a group that's also going for female startup founders and small business
Hmm.
owners,
Okay.
which has been a lot of fun to run that group. But that's something that's also available. That being said, I do also work with clients all over the world virtually. So
Ah,
it's
okay.
beautiful that we have the technology here. So I have worked with clients in India and Dubai and Canada. So wherever you are, feel free to reach out. Um, and we can figure it out. We can sort that out. So I do individual coaching, group coaching. I also offer speaking engagements. Again, speaking to partnering with organizations to help with executive and employee well-being, as well as to help uh, leadership development, particularly with a particular focus on the female leadership development in organizations and companies. And then I also have a podcast called Essential Self-Care. Which I had the opportunity to interview you, and that
Yes.
episode will be coming out in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. And let's see, and I can be found at radiantlivinginstitute.com. So that's the best way to get in touch with me and to
Okay.
learn more about any of my programs.
So you talked about navigating difficult life transitions. What kind of transitions do you help with?
Yeah, thank you. So things like career burnout, career transitions, divorce, breakups, navigating, exiting toxic relationships, empty nest. That's been a really big
Hmm.
one. That's
Okay.
been a really big one. Women
Yeah.
who are navigating empty nest for the first time in 20 years. The kids have left the house and kind of navigating, who am I now? What is my purpose? How do I fill my days? That's been a really big one. Um, so those have been the most common ones.
Yeah, and I would think that, and during a time like that, it is really important to be able to hear yourself, to,
Yes.
like to own, because I would think those feelings come up and initially you may not even understand like what
Hmm.
they are or where they're coming from. You just know that you're having this feeling, right?
Yeah.
But I think to be able to have a place and someone to talk kind of through the situation so that you can help to identify and give voice to some of the things that you're feeling and experiencing. Because I can
Absolutely.
see,
And Yeah, and just like you said with your own experience with burnout, and I can definitely say with mine, like when you're in a state, when you're in a major life transition, it can be even harder to hear your inner voice. And then if you have not practiced listening to your inner
Right.
voice and honoring her, well, then it's even harder, right? And so
Yeah,
having someone, and that's what I really do. I don't tell people what to do. I'm guiding you back to your own inner voice.
right.
And so having someone who who you can trust, to kind of reflect that back to you can be so valuable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I have enjoyed talking with you, this evening. I enjoyed talking with you on your podcast. We're definitely kindred spirits, and I'm happy to have you as a part of my universe
Yeah.
at this point. Now, we're gonna wrap up because we're out of time. But one question I do want to ask is if I am a professional woman and I'm experiencing a difficult life transition, and I'm interested in becoming, having a radiant life. I'm wanting to tap into my inner voice and to learn to hear and honor her, but I have no idea what that even looks like. I don't know that I have ever even heard her. Where would you suggest I start? How would you what's the single best thing I could do to begin that journey?
Okay, perfect. I mean, you said single. I'm gonna give you three
Yeah,
things.
single. Yeah, single best thing. But I mean, you can give me more than one. But tell me the single best thing. If I can only do one thing, tell me that, and then
Yeah.
you can follow up with some other stuff.
Yeah. So the first thing is going back to something that I said earlier, which is find a way to connect with yourself daily, whatever that looks like. And the easiest and first place that I tell people to start is do something that you enjoy. Just find something that you enjoy. And when you're going through a major life transition or when you're experiencing burnout, I can definitely say for me, when I was experiencing kind of the worst of it, I was like, I don't even know what gives me joy. Because
Yeah.
I was just in this place, right? And so in those moments, a couple ideas. One is brainstorm with friends or family members, people who you trust. Another idea is to think back to when you were a child, like go back as far as
Mm,
you need to. Like, what did you enjoy doing? Maybe it was drawing, maybe it was coloring books. Fine, go get yourself an adult coloring book or a child coloring book. It doesn't matter. But find some way to connect with yourself. Second thing, if you're like, that seems too hard, I need guidance for that, that is completely valid. I have a free workbook that people can download. It's on my website. You'll see it. There's a button, free workbook. And I will guide you through the 6 steps that I walk all of my clients through. It'll take you about 20 minutes to go through the workbook, completely guided questions, like just work through it. So that's another opportunity. Now, the third is that I'm actually writing a book about how to do this. So stay
okay.
tuned for that. So that's a bit of a longer term one because that will
Okay.
hopefully come out in hopefully in about a year. But a book is certainly a journey. But I am writing a book on that as well. So definitely tap into those other 2 resources first to get started, and stay tuned for my book.
Excellent, excellent. So you've heard it here. You know what to do. If you are not hearing your voice, you know that you should find something or do something that you enjoy every day. If you don't remember what you enjoy, go all the way back to childhood, but figure out something that you enjoy every day. And what was number two?
Free workbook, 6 steps to create your
Oh, the
radiant
workbook.
life,
That's right. The
and
workbook.
I'll
Right.
walk
And then
you
number
through
three
it.
is the
You
book,
can
but the
find that
book
on my
is
website.
down the road.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you again so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us and with the world and for helping us to live more radiant lives. Like I said, it's such a beautiful mission.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Sharita, and I agree we are kindred spirits. So happy that our paths have crossed.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Like I said, if you have questions for Dr. Sheetal after we're done, certainly put them in the comments and I will pass them on to her. I will also be putting her contact information and the link to the workbook, if that's possible,
Yeah.
in the comments as well. So take care. Have a great night. We will see you all next week. Again, registration is still open for Weekend for Me, www.weekendforme.com. You will have all the time and space you need to connect with yourself and hear your inner voice. That's a lot of the work that we do while we're there. So we would love to have you. Take care. Have a great night.